So I guess this is that clunky bit at the end of a documentary where the people who are generally behind the camera, certainly me, not this gentleman here, talk a bit about why we did or are doing this show. Why we're doing the show, mate? What's the reason behind the show?
I've always wanted to know, what is it that differentiates the very best in the world from the rest? What do they do differently? How do they think differently?
Yeah.
What do they do that everyone else isn't willing to do?
Yeah.
And when we were looking at organisations who have literally topped the world for decades,
Yeah.
the Fiji Rugby Sevens team were the first name in our conversation.
Well, this is a conversation we had, 7 or 8 months ago, and we were playing with the idea of what sort of media formats we could present to, I guess, to portray excellence in sport. And we had a pretty shabby list, but Fiji Sevens were top of that. Both have an absolute love of sport, and yeah, I think there was a shared love of trying to just document what great sports teams do. And we're in the process of having interesting conversations. We've been speaking to the likes of Bayern Munich, but I think Fiji Sevens were just. I think there's almost a mythical presence to them, isn't there? And hopefully we'll show some footage in the process of this documentary that kind of supports that.
Yeah.
But there's just something about them, certainly for me growing up, watching rugby. The Fiji Sevens, along with the likes of the All Blacks, were just one of those teams that, were just kind of legendary.
And I want to get under the skin of this sort of stuff. It doesn't happen by accident. Teams don't stay at the top of the world by accident.
Yeah.
There's got to be something that drives it, and I want to know what is that something, or more particularly, because it's not one thing. I think that's one of the other myths. What are those things? What are the ingredients, and how are they all blended together?
Yeah.
That allows an organisation like this to dominate the world. And I mean, you wrote it in a little piece when we were pulling this together. They're a tiny little island nation of about 1 million people, and they do not have the resources of the other rugby unions.
Yeah.
So there's got to be something within the DNA, within the way they think, the way they operate, that allows them to do this.
And that's one of the key points for this, isn't it? I think it's too easy to look at international sports now, whether it's kind of club teams or international teams, and I guess find money as the root of the success. And that's what we're trying to, I suppose, portray, is that it's not always about financial reserves or necessarily huge player pools. It's about something else. There's always going to be an element of money. You only have to look at the English Premiership to know that a lot of clubs have bought success, and that applies in French rugby as well, and other international games. But I think we're deliberately trying to look at teams where that just isn't the case, and certainly with these guys who you can see in the background, that's just so far from the reality of the situation.
Yeah, I mean, having spent a couple of days in their company a few weeks ago around the London Sevens tournament, it became really apparent really quickly that there's something incredibly special about this group that honestly I think it's really worth sharing.
Yeah.
There are so many lessons that I've learned from being in their company. I've been around elite sport and world-class teams for 25 years. Yeah. And I've learned an enormous amount in a handful of days with these guys. Yeah. Been inspired by them, been humbled by them. I genuinely walk away from these experiences enriched by spending time with them. Yeah. And if we can share a little bit of that with people, I think it'd be tremendously valuable.
And that's the hope. I think we've seen some things over the past 3 days here that just are absolutely, no other word, mesmeric. They've been absolutely incredible. We're currently at a place called Camford School down in Dorset, which is the former school of Ben Gollins, who is the head coach of Fiji, an Englishman, the highest point scorer in World Sevens, still, I believe. And so we're spending some time with them here in the build-up to the Commonwealth Games, which will be happening about 2 weeks from now. So on that, are we allowed to make predictions, you think, in these? This will be forever down on camera now. We've had 2 or 3 days in camp with them. They're looking pretty good. They're looking pretty relaxed. They seem to have ironed out some possible issues. What do we reckon?
I think at this stage, if I was in Ben's shoes, I'd be thinking we're on course. Long way to go, absolutely, and all sorts can happen between now and Commonwealth Games, and fingers crossed into their the sharp end of the tournament into the final. A lot can happen, but you look at the trajectory at this point. Are they heading in the right direction? And I would say, from what I've seen, I'd be pretty confident if I was in a position that these are good early signs.
Yeah, I think I'll go the same. I think, again, I think I had like Simon, I've been around, genuine elite athletes in my work over the years, and you see something very different in terms of their level of performance. These guys, it's just another level again in terms of how they hold themselves and how they move across a pitch. It's genuinely fascinating to watch. So I think you'd be mad not to back them, and we now have that down on camera. We should also say thank you to Joel, who's behind the lens, who is doing a sterling job in capturing some amazing stuff. What else do directors say in these moments? Like when you watch, do we watch the end of movies and do the director's cut? I do sometimes.
I'd probably say what I say at the end of many of the sessions that I deliver, which is, I really hope you find this enjoyable, but more than that, I hope you gain some genuine value out of it. And that there's something in here that you can take away that will help you do whatever you do as well as you possibly can.